In a world where doll makers create mermaids, that are unable to stand on their own, one creator knew this needed to change. People told her she would fail. This is her story.
While I was brainstorming the stand for my mermaid doll, I kept coming back to an Atlantis-looking landscape. Not this. So my wife and I began to dig around on Thingiverse to see what elements we could steal. Elements we could plagiarize. Okay, elements we could utilize in a new design. My wife made a basic 3D model of Nerissa so we could build the design around her. Then we brought in the Thingiverse files and began to play with the layout. One of the limitations we had was that Nerissa was supposed to be on display at my table at Wonderland of Play, so we had a specific space we could fit her and her stand. And this is what we ended up with. We then subdivided the pieces and printed them on our Elegoo Mars Pro. However, we ran out of resin many times, which is why the base is so many different colors. Then we used super glue to assemble everything. To fill in the gaps and seams, I used Aves Epoxy Sculpt. I like to weigh out my parts A and B to ensure that I'm mixing equal parts of both. After mixing thoroughly, I let the epoxy sit for about 5 minutes. This helps to remove some of the stickiness. Then I begin to fill in the gaps and let it cure for 24 hours. After being distracted by my puppers, I sprayed the entire stand with Krylon primer. Then let that dry overnight. To help strengthen the base, we filled the inside with an expanding foam. This was great because it doesn't add a lot of weight, but does prevent the base from collapsing in on itself. Well, since this is supposed to be an underwater scene and not on a snowy mountaintop, I guess we should add some color. I begin by airbrushing an underlying color for the sand. Then a base gray for the rocks. Back at my work table, I water down some acrylic paint to sponge onto the rocks. This will add a rough texture, but also add a bit of extra detail. The sponge I was using wasn't great, and it caused me quite a few issues. So, my top tip is to get a nice sea sponge from your local art store. Then I painted on some black, and then mixed together a bright green to look like algae. Then applied it to my rocks. With my watered down black acrylic, I painted sections of the pillars. But before the paint had a chance to dry, I would wipe the excess paint away. This is called a black wash. It's a neat effect because the black stays in the cracks or the areas where light doesn't hit it as well. Plus, it has a great marbled texture to the planes of the pillars. I mean, look at how the wash transforms this decorative section. Then I gently sanded the high points to bring back some of the white. Next, I dry brushed both brown and white onto the pillars. To dry brush, Essentially, you dip the brush into the paint and then scribble on a towel or rag to remove most of the paint. Then slap the hell out of your miniature. I purchased these perfectly sized resin coral pieces on Amazon, but they were a little too brightly colored for the scene. I tried to use my thinned black on them, but it made the coral look dirty. So I decided to mix some of this blue with gold flecks into my wash, and that seemed to create a nicer result. Okay, so I caught this on film and had to keep it in the video. I was trying to show the glue to the camera, but my wife thought I was handing it to her. After chastising her, I went back in for another shot and she decided to steal the glue from me. Her punishment is that she had to decide where most of the coral was going to go. To cover the base, we purchased some playground sand. However, unironically, it was very dusty and had a lot of bigger rocks mixed in with the fine sand. So we used a strainer to separate the two, then washed both in water and then put them in the oven to dry. Then, using a sponge brush, I dabbed Mod Podge onto the areas I wanted to have sand. Then sprinkled the fine sand on top and let dry. I had all of these adorable seashells that I purchased for Nerissa's outfit, but only ended up using a few, so this seemed like the perfect application. I attached them with glue. In the pack, there were these two tiny clamshells, so I decided to glue them together and place a pearl inside as a cute little Easter egg for the stand. Now, with my chonky boys, I decided to fill in some of the areas near the painted rocks to help those areas look a little more believable and also adding some additional texture to the scene. After that had a chance to dry, I knocked off the additional rocks that didn't stick. In order to help the seashells look buried in the sand, I added an additional layer of Mod Podge and sand on top. To prevent any of this from scratching off the surface, I mixed together 2 parts water with 1 part Mod Podge and a drop of Dawn dish soap. Then brushed the mixture on top and let it dry for 24 hours. First, I attached the pillars. I found this roll of mini garland that I usually use for flower crowns, but realized it sort of looks like seaweed. So I twisted some pieces together and glued them on. Okay, I know this isn't the type of content you'd prefer to see from me, but I hope you enjoyed it all the same. My next complex doll is being quite temperamental, so hopefully she behaves and I can release that video very soon. That project is pretty crazy, so I hope you'll look out for it. If you liked this project, please hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Every subscription, like, share, and comment helps my channel grow and keeps me excited to continue sharing my process with you all. Plus, I love commenting with you all afterward. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you had a sweet time.